I knew John from the beginning, so it made no difference to me. Our marriage was a bizarre marriage under any circumstances, but it was what we were used to. We were only children. When you look back, I was 20, 21, and John was 20. I was 21 and John was, say, 20. And we were babies. I look at my son now and I think, my God, what we did there. I dread to think how he would cope with it, at this time in his life.
When an attractive star is off the market, it's a major disappointment for fans. When that star is one of the Beatles, it causes hysteria. Cynthia and John Lennon had to hide their love in order to not be mobbed. They couldn't hide forever, and the world eventually found out they were married with a son. That happiness couldn't last forever, though. Long spans of time gave the insecure John's wandering eye a chance to start looking elsewhere. When she discovered how far it had gone, she called things off. Keep watching to learn why Cynthia and John Lennon divorced immediately after this happened. Meeting John. Cynthia Powell was born September 10, 1939. She had 3 siblings and 2 stepbrothers, Charles and Anthony. Her family was from Liverpool, but it was a frequent target of German air raids during WW2. They had to move to the posh area of Hoylake for their safety. Cynthia showed early promise in the arts. She won a prize organized in a contest by the Liverpool Echo. She was accepted into Liverpool's junior art school a year later. Her father was dying of lung cancer by the time she was 16. He told her she'd have to get a job to support the family instead of going to art school. She decided to rent out a room to 4 apprentice electricians to cover the cost of college. Cynthia started attending the Liverpool College of Art in September 1957. That was where she met John Lennon, when they both attended a calligraphy class together. He was constantly borrowing pens from her because he never had any on him. She also discovered he was only there as a last-ditch option because no other colleges would take him. He'd tease her posh background, but the bud of a romantic relationship was blossoming. He once showed up with a guitar to serenade her with Ain't She Sweet. John first asked Cynthia to go out with him after a college party to celebrate the end of the term. She said she was engaged to a man in Hoylake. He remained persistent, and they began dating. Cynthia officially ended her engagement in autumn of 1958 to start dating John. He also ended a relationship with another student, Thelma Pickles. Dating John. The couple's happiness was often ruined by John's erratic moods. He once slapped her after she danced with Stuart Sutcliffe. Cynthia said, John admits he struggled to be kind to his girlfriends. Tony Bramwell, a close family friend, said it was John's career that helped keep them together. He was insecure, and Cynthia enjoyed being the one to support him and pump him up. They wrote many love letters during the Beatles' first Hamburg residency in 1960. His grandmother and legal guardian Mimi was often a thorn in their side. When her student grant ran out, Cynthia took a job at Woolworths to pay rent. John got £100 that year from his Aunt Elizabeth Sutherland. He went to Paris with Paul McCartney, but she couldn't come with him because she was studying for final exams. John went to Hamburg again in April of 1962. Cynthia discovered she failed her art teacher's diploma exam. Then she got a bigger surprise. Cynthia became pregnant with John's son, Julian. They had never used contraception or talked about it. When she told John, he said, quote, "There's only one thing for it, Cyn. We'll have to get married." Marrying into Beatlemania. Cynthia and John were married August 23, 1962, at the Mount Pleasant Register office in Liverpool. Fellow Beatles Paul and George were there, along with their manager, Brian Epstein, who was the best man. The event was a bit of a joke, but they did celebrate later in Reese's Restaurants in Clayton Square, where John's parents had celebrated their marriage in 1938. They had no immediate honeymoon because John had an engagement at the River Park Ballroom in Chester that night. They later went to the Hotel George IV in Paris. Brian gave them a place to live and paid for Cynthia's baby to be delivered. Julian was born April 8, 1963. His only condition was that they deny the marriage and pregnancy to maintain the Beatles' major following among young girls. The group denied it when they were publicly asked. They couldn't keep the secret forever, though. Cynthia had Julian christened in November 1963, which John said he didn't want. The media found out and made up stories about his secret wife and son. They even managed to find out where the couple was living. They had a 3-bedroom flat at 13 Emperor's Gate. Fans saw her climbing up the steps and would camp out in the hallways. She and John would have to push through them when they came in or out. They decided to publicly acknowledge the secret when Cynthia joined John on the Beatles' first U.S. tour. He allowed the press to publicly photograph them together, much to his manager's dismay. The fans were even worse in America. Security had to keep an extra close eye on her, as they'd tear off John's clothes and write him desperate love letters. They'd even kick her in the legs, and one who demanded she leave John alone. It was the only time she went on tour with them. Their ski vacations in St. Moritz weren't even safe from Beatlemania. Cynthia, along with George's wife, Pattie Boyd, had to escape dressed as maids. They then got a luxurious house in Kenwood. Cynthia enjoyed entertaining large parties there and raised her son herself. Divorcing John. The first hints of John Lennon's relationship with Yoko Ono came when the Beatles were scheduled to fly to India and visit the Maharishi. Cynthia found letters between them. He denied they were involved and said she was just some, quote, crazy artist. That didn't keep her from continuing to call and visit Kenwood. It was eventually discovered that he was sneaking out every morning to the local post office to see if Yoko had sent him any letters. Cynthia didn't find out about these trips for some time. She unfortunately said, quote, I had thought our magical interlude with the Maharishi would be the making of our marriage, but in reality, it just presaged the end. On their flight back to England, he got drunk and admitted he'd been involved with several other women during their marriage. Despite never writing any songs for her, he later said he wrote the 1965 song Norwegian Wood, This Bird Has Flown, about one of these affairs, but, quote, rendered it in gobbledygook so she wouldn't know. He suggested she take a holiday in Greece while he recorded the White Album. She came home early to find him and Yoko in matching robes on the floor, staring into each other's eyes. John seemed normal when she returned the next day, claiming he loved her more than ever. The story got peculiar again when he went to New York to record with Paul and she wasn't invited. That's when she found out he was planning to divorce her on grounds of adultery, seek sole custody of Julian, and send her back to Hoylake. She was shocked, but began her own divorce proceedings when news of Yoko's pregnancy broke on August 22, 1968. The divorce was granted November 8, 1968. John refused to offer more than £75,000. The final settlement went up to £100,000 and £2,400 annually. It also included custody of Julian. A further £100,000 was put into a trust fund, which Julian would inherit at age 21. His mother would receive the payments until then. The trust was hampered because it provided for any of John's future children. That meant that when Yoko gave birth to Sean Lennon, Julian's inheritance was cut to £50,000. The couple had one final meeting at Kenwood, where she decided to live. He accused her of having an affair in India. One good thing did come out of the mess. Paul visited Cynthia later that year. On the way there, he composed a song in his mind that would later become the Beatles' hit, Hey Jude. It was originally called Hey Jules as a way to comfort Julian. Paul was one of the first people to see and try to cheer up Cynthia, who said, quote, I will never forget Paul's gesture of care and concern in coming to see us. Now it's time to hear from you. What was the most surprising part of this story? Let us know in the comments section below.